The clash of the Ice Age titans, a tale of blood and snow. The wind did not just blow across the steppe, it screamed. It was a sound that had been constant for 1,000 years, a ceaseless gale carving the ice sheets of the northern hemisphere during the late Pleistocene. Here, in a world painted in shades of blinding white and bruised gray, silence was a luxury, and warmth was a distant memory. The temperature was 30 degrees below zero, cold enough to freeze breath instantly, turning it into tiny crystals that clung to fur and whiskers. In this frozen theater, a shadow moved. It was colossal, a mountain of muscle and shaggy hair navigating the deep drifts with surprising grace. This was the bull mammoth, a woolly giant in the prime of his life. He stood 11 feet tall at the shoulder, a living fortress weighing 6 tons. His tusks, curved and stained with the tannins of ancient bark, swept forward like scythes, each one nearly as long as a man. The massive herbivore was alone. He had been separated from his herd during a whiteout blizzard 3 days prior, and now the deep vibrating rumble of his calls went unanswered, swallowed by the howling wind. The bull mammoth was not worried, not yet. He was the lord of the tundra. His coat was a marvel of biological engineering, consisting of a dense, woolly undercoat protected by long, coarse guard hairs that hung nearly to the ground. Underneath that skin, a layer of fat 4 inches thick insulated his massive organs. He lowered his head, using his curved tusks to sweep away the heavy snow, exposing the dry, frozen grasses beneath. He wrapped his trunk around a tuft, tearing it free with a rhythmic crunch. But the wind carried more than just snow. It carried a scent. Downwind, concealed within a cluster of dwarf birch trees and rocky outcrops, eyes the color of amber watched the giant. They belonged to the alpha Smilodon, often called the Saber-Toothed tiger, though he was no tiger at all. He was stockier, more muscular, built like a wrestler rather than a runner. The stocky predator was desperate. His pride, consisting of 3 females and 2 other males, had not eaten in a week. The megafauna were migrating, and the pickings were slim. The alpha Smilodon opened his mouth, tasting the air. His most terrifying weapons were on full display. 2 7-inch canine teeth, serrated like steak knives, protruding past his lower jaw. These were precision instruments, designed not to crush bone, but to shear through the soft tissue of a throat, severing the jugular vein and windpipe in seconds. But they were fragile. If he struck a bone, they would snap, condemning him to a slow death by starvation. The mammoth was huge, a target the pride would usually avoid. A lone bull was dangerous, aggressive, and nearly invincible, but hunger is a powerful motivator, one that overrides fear. The alpha signaled to the others with a low, chuffing sound that was felt more than heard. The pride fanned out, their tawny coats blending perfectly with the dry grass and rock. They would not attack all at once. They needed to tire the giant, to bleed him, to bring the fortress down to its knees. The bull mammoth stopped chewing. His ears, small compared to his modern elephant cousins to prevent frostbite, twitched. The vibration of the ground had changed. It wasn't the rhythmic thrum of a herd. It was the soft, padded placement of heavy paws. He stopped moving, his trunk raised high, the tip acting as a periscope for his sense of smell. Musk, cat, danger. The massive herbivore trumpeted, a blast of sound that cut through the wind like a foghorn. He spun specifically toward the rocky outcrop, instinctively knowing where the ambush would come from. He did not run. Running triggered the chase instinct in predators, and in deep snow, the mammoth's weight was a disadvantage against the lighter cats who could walk on top of the crust. Instead, he stood his ground, shaking his massive head, his tusks sweeping a deadly arc through the air. The first attack came from the rear. One of the younger males broke cover, sprinting across the snow with explosive speed. He leaped, aiming for the mammoth's hindquarters, his claws extending like grappling hooks. The cat landed, digging deep into the thick wool. The bull mammoth roared in annoyance rather than pain. His skin was inches thick. The cat's claws barely scratched the surface, but the weight was significant. The giant bucked, kicking his massive rear leg back with the force of a battering ram. The kick missed the cat by inches, but the motion dislodged the predator, sending him tumbling into a snowbank. This was the distraction the alpha Smilodon needed. As the bull mammoth turned to address the nuisance at his rear, the alpha and the dominant female launched their assault from the front. This was the most dangerous place to be. One swipe of the mammoth's trunk could break a spine, a gore from a tusk could disembowel. The alpha aimed for the side of the neck, just behind the jaw, looking for the soft spot where the great artery pulsed. He hit the mammoth with the force of a cannonball, his massive forelimbs wrapping around the giant's shoulder. His claws, sharper and longer than the younger male's, found purchase, tearing through the mat of hair and raking the skin. The bull mammoth screamed, a sound of primal rage. He felt the weight of the predator dragging him down. The sheer power of the Smilodon was immense. These cats were built to wrestle large prey to the ground. The alpha opened his jaw to its full 120-degree gape, positioning his sabers. He had to be perfect. He drove his head down. But the bull mammoth was not a passive victim. He was a veteran of many winters and many fights. He dropped his shoulder, shifting his center of gravity, and then violently thrust upward and sideways. The movement threw the alpha's aim off. Instead of sinking into the soft throat, his teeth grazed the thick hide of the shoulder. Recognizing the danger of breaking his sabers on the shoulder blade, the alpha aborted the bite, releasing his grip to avoid being crushed. He landed on his feet with cat-like agility, but the bull mammoth was already moving. The mammoth didn't retreat, he advanced. He swung his tusks sideways. The curved ivory caught the female Smilodon, who had been trying to hamstring his front leg. The blow didn't pierce her, but the impact was like being hit by a swinging log. She was thrown 10 feet through the air, landing with a sickening thud against the ice, ribs cracking under the force. The dynamic of the fight shifted instantly. The predators had lost the element of surprise. They had failed to secure a throat bite early. Now, they were in the open against an enraged leviathan. The alpha Smilodon circled, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The hunger in his belly burned hotter, but the instinct for self-preservation flickered. The mammoth was bleeding from the shoulder, bright red drops staining the pristine snow, but the wound was superficial. The bull mammoth turned with the cats, keeping his tusks facing the threats. He stamped his feet, the ground shaking, warning them. The pride hesitated. The injured female was dragging herself away, whining in pain. The younger male, who had attacked the rear, was wary, staying back. The alpha looked at the massive wall of fur and ivory. He calculated the odds. To continue the attack meant risking his teeth, his life, and the future of his line. The mammoth was too strong, too alert, and the snow was too deep for the cats to maneuver effectively. The standoff lasted for what seemed like an eternity, the two apex predators of the Pleistocene locking eyes across the evolutionary divide. One was the master of brute force and endurance, the other, the master of precision and ambush. Today, brute force had won. With a low snarl that signaled retreat rather than submission, the alpha backed away. He turned, signaling to the remaining members of his pride. They melted back into the gray landscape, shadows returning to the dark. They would have to find easier prey, perhaps a bison or a young horse. This mountain was not to be moved. The bull mammoth watched them go, his chest heaving. He did not pursue. He waited until the scent of the cats had completely faded from the wind. Only then did he relax his posture. He used his trunk to touch the scratch on his shoulder, blowing warm air onto the wound. It would heal. The storm began to pick up again, fresh snow falling to cover the blood and the chaotic footprints of the battle. The bull mammoth turned his massive head back into the wind, continuing his march. Somewhere ahead, through the white veil, his herd was waiting. He was the survivor of the ice, the king of the steppe, and he would walk until the winter ended. The silence returned to the tundra, keeping the secrets of the struggle buried beneath the eternal snow.